Jana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Prabhupada, Jaya. Om Shambha Paramahansa Bhavaraja Gacharya also touched us to see what AC. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namachar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kundaraj Kodikidi Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Tulasi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Deshatadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 84, Verse 42. Sri Stoka Uvacha Iti Tadvachanam Shrutva Vasadevo Mahamana Tanrishin Ritvajo Vavre Murnanam Ya Prasadya Cha. Sri Sukuvacha. Sukadeva Goswami said, Iti, thus spoken, taught, there, vachanam, words, shrutva, having heard, Vasudeva, Mahamana, generous, Tan, them, Rashin, sages, Ritvija, as priests, Vavre, chose, Mudna, with his head, Anamya, bowing down, Prasadya, gratifying them, Cha, also. Translation, Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing these statements of the sages, generous, Vasudeva bowed his head to the ground, and praising them, requested them to become his priests. Thus requested by him, O king, the sages engaged the pious Vasudeva in performing fire sacrifices at that holy place of Kurukshetra, according to the strict religious principles and with most excellent ritual arrangements. When Maharaj Vasudeva was about to be initiated for the sacrifice, O king, the Vrishnis came to the initiation pavilion after bathing and putting on fine clothes and garlands of lotuses. Other kings also came, elaborately ornamented, as well as all their joyful queens, who wore jeweled lockets around their necks and were also clad in fine garments. The royal wives were anointed with sandalwood paste and carried auspicious items for the worship. Mridangas, patahas, conch shells, heris, anakas, and other instruments resounded. Male and female dancers danced, and sutas and magadas recited glorifications. Sweet-voiced Gandharvis sang, accompanied by their husbands. After Vasudeva's eyes had been decorated with black cosmetic and his body smeared with fresh butter, the priest initiated him according to scriptural rules by sprinkling him and his 18 wives with sacred water. Encircled by his wives, he resembled the regal moon encircled by stars. Purport. Devaki was Vasudeva's principal wife, but she had several co-wives, including her 6 sisters. This fact is recorded in the 9th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. Ahuka had 2 sons named Devaka and Ugrasena. Devaka had 4 sons named Devavan, Upadeva, Sudeva, and Devavardhana, and he also had 7 daughters named Shantideva, Upadeva, Srideva, Devarakshita, Sahadeva, Devaki, and Dritadeva. Dritadeva was the eldest. Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, married all these sisters. Some of Vasudeva's other wives are mentioned a few verses later. Devaki, Pauravi, Rohini, Bhadra, Madhira, Rochana, Ila, and others were all wives of Anakudundapi. Among them, Devaki was the chief. Vasudeva received initiation along with his wives, who wore silk saris and were adorned with bangles, necklaces, ankle bells, and earrings. With his body wrapped in a deerskin, Vasudeva shone splendidly. My dear King Parikshit, Vasudeva's priests and the officiating members of the assembly, dressed in silk dhotis and jeweled ornaments, looked so effulgent that they seemed to be standing in the sacrificial arena of Indra, the killer of Vritra. At that time, Balaram and Krishna, the lords of all living entities, shone forth with great majesty in the company of their respective sons, wives, and other family members who were expansions of their opulences. Performing various kinds of Vedic sacrifice according to the proper regulations, Vasudeva worshipped the Lord of all sacrificial paraphernalia, mantras, and rituals. He executed both primary and secondary sacrifices, offering oblations to the sacred fire and carrying out other aspects of sacrificial worship. Purport. There are numerous kinds of Vedic sacrifice, each of which involves several elaborate rituals. The Brahmana portion of the Vedic scripture specifies the complete step-to-step procedure of only a few prototype sacrifices such as the Jyotistoma and Darsha Purnamasa. These are called the Prakrita or original yagyas. The details of other yagyas must be extrapolated from the patterns of these Prakrita injunctions according to the strict rules of the Mimamsa Shastra. Since other yagyas are just known by derivation from the prototype sacrifices, they are called Vikrita or changed. Then at the appropriate time and according to scripture, Vasudeva remunerated the priests by decorating them with precious ornaments, though they were already richly adorned, and offering them valuable gifts of cows, land, and marriageable girls. After supervising the Patni Sangyaja and Avabritya rituals, the great Brahmana sages bathed in Lord Parsuram's lake with the sponsor of the sacrifice, Vasudeva, who led them. His sacred bath complete, Vasudeva joined with his wives in giving the jewelry and clothes they had been wearing to the professional reciters. Vasudeva then put on new garments, after which he honored all classes of people by feeding everyone, even the dogs. With opulent gifts, he honored his relatives, including all their wives and children. The royalty of the Vidarbha, Koshala, Kuru, Kasi, Kikaya, and Srinjaya kingdoms, the officiating members of the assembly, and also the priests, witnessing demigods, humans, spirits, forefathers, and charanas. Then, taking permission from Lord Krishna, the shelter of the goddess of fortune, the various guests departed as they all chanted the glories of Vasudeva's sacrifice. The Yadus were all embraced by their friends, close family members, and other relatives, including Dhritarashtra and his younger brother Vidura, Pritha and her sons, Bhishma, Drona, the twins, Nakula and Sahadev, Narada and Vedavyas, the personality of Godhead. Their hearts melting with affection, these and other guests left for their kingdoms. Their progress showed by the pain of separation. Nanda Maharaj showed his affection for his relatives, the Yadus, by remaining with them a little longer, together with his cowherds. During his stay, Krishna, Balaram, Ugrasena, and others honored him with especially opulent worship. Having so easily crossed over the vast ocean of his ambition, Vasudeva felt fully satisfied. In the company of his many well-wishers, he took Nanda by the hand and addressed him as follows. Shri Vasudeva said, "My dear brother, God himself has tied the knot called affection, which tightly binds human beings together. It seems to me that even great heroes and mystics find it very difficult to free themselves from it. Purport: heroic leaders of men try to transcend their petty attachments by force of will, while introspective yogis pursue knowledge for the same purpose. But the Lord's illusory energy, Maya, is much stronger than any conditioned soul. Only by taking shelter of Krishna, the Lord of Maya, can one become immune to her influence. Indeed, the Supreme Lord must have created the bonds of affection. For such exalted saints as you have never stopped showing matchless friendship towards us ingrates, although it has never been properly reciprocated. Previously, dear brother, we did nothing to benefit because we were unable to, yet even now that you are present before us, our eyes are so blinded by the intoxication of material good fortune that we continue to ignore you." Purport: while living under the tyranny of Kamsa, Vasudeva was unable to do anything to help Nanda and his subjects defend themselves against the many demons sent from Mathura to kill Krishna and Balaram. O most respectful one, may a person who wants the highest benefit in life never gain kingly opulence, for it leaves him blind to the needs of his own family and friends. Purport: it is, of course, out of deep humility that Vasudeva is berating himself, but his condemnation of opulence is in general valid. Earlier in this canto, Narada Muni delivered a stinging criticism Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, two wealthy sons of Kuvera, the treasurer of the heaven. Intoxicated by both pride and liquor, the two had failed to offer proper respects to Narada when he happened upon them, as they sported naked in the Mandakini river with some young women. Seeing them in their shameful condition, Narada said, Nahan yo Jushito Joshan Budi Brahmso Rajaguna Srimadat Abhijatyadir Yatra Stri Jutam Asavaha. Among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family, and being learned. When one is uneducated but falsely puffed up by wealth, the result is that one engages his wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. So the many verses here are describing the sacrifice carried out by Vasudeva through the priests who were these sages. And we can understand it was a very elaborate sacrifice requiring lots of wealth and also expertise to do these sacrifices. In fact, such sacrifices generally cannot even be done in the modern day because we don't have the priests that have the knowledge to do these sacrifices. Nevertheless, at that time, it was not so difficult to do, but it required some special arrangements and knowledgeable sages and wealth. So that was all supplied here at this particular time. The sages had arrived and the Yadus had their wealth, so they displayed that very nicely as described here with their decorations and how they gave gifts to everyone. So the sacrifice was finished, and then we find here how Nanda Maharaj is approached by Vasudeva, and he apologizes for not properly rewarding him for protecting Krishna and Balaram and Vraja when he was in Mathura with Kamsa. And he identifies himself as an ordinary living entity with material bondage, etc., and blinded by wealth. So previously we saw a display of that wealth where the Yadus give out gifts to everyone else to satisfy them after the sacrifice. So Vasudeva identifies himself as a wealthy person who, because of his wealth, has lost his good qualities and consequently does not recognize the friendship and the services that Nanda Maharaj has done. But of course, we also know that this is in one sense, just as previously Vasudeva was saying how he was just a normal person in this world. He identifies himself as such. So again, he identifies himself as a materialistic person here, though actually he's not, because he's a direct associate of the Lord. And of course, he carried out all these sacrifices, which are not really necessary because Krishna is there. They have direct association with Krishna, and Krishna is the son of Vasudeva. So why does he have to do these other sacrifices as worship of the Supreme Lord? Which is all quite indirect, because Krishna's right there present. Of course, Krishna was also present at the sacrifice. So in one sense, it's just a kind of a show. But this is, we say, one part of their pastime is to illustrate their ideal behavior as kings. So they carry out these same rituals. And we'll see that other kings as well do the same thing, like Ambarish Maharaj does sacrifices as well, even though he has no interest in them. So these are, of course, scripturally prescribed things, and if people are capable of doing them and have the capacity and whatnot, and want to, they can do these types of sacrifices. Ultimately, all of them, again, are related to the Supreme Lord, either directly or indirectly, so no problem if we direct it to the Lord. However, there are much simpler ways of satisfying the Lord. So as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you just offer me a leaf, a fruit, a flower. Why do you have to do all these complicated ceremonies? And involving so many people and so much wealth, etc. Everybody has some water and some leaves and some fruit, so very easy to worship the Lord, provided the devotion is there. So the same here. If the devotion is there and the people involved recognize who the goal of the sacrifice is, and they have proper devotion, then nothing wrong with it. However, if they get sidetracked and they get caught up in the material motives of karma kanda, which is generally what happens because these sacrifices offer great material wealth. If they get caught up in that, and then the relationship with the Lord becomes more indirect and mixed. Then it becomes a big endeavor for material benefits instead. In that way, the relationship with the Lord becomes lost in those ceremonies and sacrifices, and thus less significant as far as establishing a strong connection with the Lord is concerned. Of course, it is a connection of some sort, so it has some value for these people, but we can say less powerful than doing direct devotional service with the proper intentions. So, we can do simpler things such as hearing and chanting and remembering, which are direct processes. Even then, again, we can be inattentive and not direct it towards the Supreme Lord with devotion, etc. Or we can do it with the proper way, with devotion. So again, even with a simple process, we can also not carry it out properly or use it for the wrong purposes or with mixed intentions, etc. So we have mixed bhakti or inattentive bhakti and so many types of bhakti as well, even if it's direct bhakti. Still, however, the direct bhakti has great power in it and it's much simpler to do. So it is always recommended we carry out the process of direct devotional activities as mentioned in Nectar Devotion. And, of course, if we can do them with the proper devotion, then this is the best of all. This is the best thing. So, yes, we can worship the Lord with no desire, all desires, or whatever. Any condition we can worship, but the best position is to worship without any material desires. So, Uttama Bhakti or pure Bhakti is the best way in which we can do these items. And in that case, then it does not really matter what items you offer. So you don't even have to offer items. So generally we have in deity worship so many items. You can offer 64 items or 16 items, etc. Standard items, or you can put it down to 8 items, or you can put it down to 3 items. A lamp, a flower, and some water, or whatever, or just one item, devotion. Or you can offer everything in your mind with devotion, and still, Lord accepts that also. It's equal. It's equal to offering all these items if you offer everything in your mind, but with devotion, same result you get. So the process is very flexible. And can be performed in all sorts of conditions where other things like these elaborate sacrifices cannot be done. And we get very good result if we have that devotion. So that is the primary factor in all these different types of devotion activities, the activities of bhakti. That is the devotional element there. That is what makes it very, very special. And that is the basis of the bhakti itself, because the faith itself is a sign of devotion, and that has to be developed through the various actions we do. So that has to be an essential element in all cases. Therefore, the people are always encouraged to do direct bhakti if they are qualified with that faith. If they don't have the faith, then they have these other options like these sacrifices and whatnot. So they're not the best, they're second best, not direct bhakti, but they have bhakti elements in them. And we can maybe purify them even more by doing them directly, understanding its service to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of Vasudeva when he does everything here, even better. But nevertheless, they're more complicated procedures, so better we can, or simpler for us if we just do the angas of bhakti. These are the primary things. So these are called the major type of devotional service. So Vasudeva is identifying himself as a fallen person here and criticizing himself for being intoxicated with wealth. So wealth is often singled out in the Bhagavatam as a big, cause of all sorts of problems, as in the case of the two sons of Kuvera there. So Narada Muni there just criticizes wealth like anything. Kuvera is the demigod of wealth, and he has these two sons who got intoxicated with the wealth, and consequently they were having all sorts of sense gratification, and thus they ignored Narada Muni, and thus he cursed them. So wealth can be a very big problem for people in the material world, and here Vasudeva is saying the same thing. Cause of all your problems is wealth. However, on the other hand, we see that wealth can also be used in service of the Lord. So it's not necessarily bad, but if we have the wrong character or consciousness, then of course we can fall into all sorts of bad habits. So if we're materialists, then definitely wealth becomes a problem. And thus, the scriptures have preventative measures to help us. And thus, charity is always praised in the scriptures as a good punya. You have to do charity work, which means you need money to do that. So that means you have to spend up your money. So this is a good way of using your wealth. They encourage people to get punyas for next lifetime by spending up their wealth of this lifetime. And by doing that, hopefully, they become less attached to their wealth, and they understand, this is actually not mine, it doesn't belong to me. So for this reason, the different punyas are recommended in the Vedic scriptures to help us engage our wealth. The other way we can engage wealth is in deity worship. So the other processes like hearing and chanting, they don't require any money at all. But deity worship may require money if we're going to do it elaborately according to Pancharatric standards. You have to build a temple, you have to have so many services, you have to offer things to the Lord, elaborate items like clothing, etc. So it requires wealth. So therefore, a householder should engage himself in deity worship, and that way he can use his wealth in a proper way. So that's a devotional way in which we can use wealth. Of course, here we can say that performing these huge sacrifices for the pleasure of Vishnu is another way in which you can engage your wealth. So various ways we can engage wealth devotionally. And that's not problematic, and actually it's beneficial for us because it's a devotional service. So we use our wealth, and at the same time we're doing a devotional activity. So we can advance very nicely by doing that. Therefore the deity worship is a recommended process for people who have money. They can spend that money on doing services for the deity. So in this way, wealth itself is not a problem, but it has to be used in the proper way. So that means yukta vairagya has to be followed. We can accept the items and use the items, but without attachment for ourselves. Then it becomes very beneficial. We can do more service for the Supreme Lord. So though we have this condemnation of wealth in the material world, we have the other side. We have engagement of wealth for proper things. In general, of course, we find that devotees doing sadhana try to avoid the wealth because of the temptation that they may become attracted, as we see the warning is given here by Vasudeva. He says, I'm attracted to this wealth, and therefore I've lost my good qualities because of this. So many devotees try to avoid that type of wealth in order to advance properly in devotional service. On the other hand, we do see good examples of people who engage their wealth as well without any harmful effects. So, therefore, it depends on the proper attitude. If we have the proper attitude, devotional attitude, then we can use that wealth in the service of the Lord.
In certain countries, the unemployed youths are given free soaps by the government, free money and other things. Will this not take away their skills? They'll become lazy and they don't work. Unless they work, they won't increase the intelligence. If simply we give free things to the poor people, and they'll just simply take the money and eat, and they won't work.
Yeah, maybe we have two sides of this. Government is responsible for everyone, so they have to, in one sense, make sure that everybody is taken care of. So one way is to give everybody jobs and let them do that. Sometimes they can't find jobs for everybody. So what do? Let them starve to death? No, so then they have this social system where the poor people that can't find a job, then they give them some money. Until they can get a job, then they give them less money or whatever. So there's some sort of idea that they should work, but if they can't, then they support them and they give them some benefits like that. So not a bad system, because the government technically is responsible for everyone. But in the Vedic system, it was a little bit different. In fact, the whole system of working was different, so the Sudra didn't actually get money at all. He just got taken care of by the higher castes. But we don't have that system anymore, so everybody has to work, so therefore the government has to take care of everybody. In the present-day system, this is one way of doing that. The other is to find jobs for everybody, if it is possible. And that way we can make sure that they're not just simply lazy and taking advantage.
You're explaining regarding this primary bhakti and secondary bhakti. And you were saying that Shravanam Kirtanam means this 9 process of bhakti is a primary and others are secondary. Like here is doing sacrifice is secondary. Correct. And what about the other yugas like Satyuga, Tathayuga, Dwapara Yuga? The Shravana Kirtana was not that much prominent in other yugas.
It's always there. It's always there. But actually, these are not actually called secondary bhakti in some cases, like in the Treta Yuga. It's a primary method. It's a way of worshipping the Lord. But the people there understand that this is just like deity worship. We're worshipping the Supreme Lord directly, so they understand sacrifice also. The fire is only representing ultimately Vishnu, so we're worshipping Vishnu through sacrifice, so therefore it becomes a direct method. Though it's a rather elaborate method, it's a direct method of worshipping the Lord. And meditation also, of course, even in bhakti, jhana is one of the direct methods. So in Satya Yuga, that was the direct method for most people. But they also do the other processes, just like now we're doing Nam Sankirtan, but we don't neglect other processes also. We do the other things, but this becomes the main process.
That means in other yugas also this Shravanam Kirtana was there. So it was going on together with the that Yuga Dharma process also.
Yeah. All the processes are always there. One is emphasized more than the others as the Yuga Dharma or whatever, that's all.
And what about Maharaj? You are explaining regarding this wealth. Wealth is not bad when you use it for the service of Krishna. And sometimes we see that devotee might have enough money, but they don't want to spend that money for the service of Krishna, but still they think that, okay, why you have to take the process, better we are taking the primary process like a Shravanam Kirtan process, might take it. So how it will go simultaneously both, that wealth is there but it's not easy for the service, but at the same time they are accepting the secondary, primary process, Shravanam Kirtanam. Okay, we will do that. So how it will go? Means it is compulsory that when someone has a wealth, they have to use it for service of Krishna.
Well, at least they shouldn't use it for sense gratification. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Ultimately, they'll do that only.
So the danger of wealth is that we get attached to it, and then we use it for the wrong activities, sinful activities. So that's the negative side of wealth. So if we can prevent that, fine, somehow or other.
Then how, when we have all wealth, how wealth help us to advance in Krishna consciousness? Means, because when we use the wealth for the service of Krishna, sometimes sometimes devotees feel that, oh, I am giving money, but this money is really using for the service of Krishna. Sometimes congregational devotees have a doubt: are they really using my money for the service of Krishna, or they are enjoying? Yeah, sometimes people has this doubt. How to understand this?
Well, it depends on the attitude one has. Of course, you can doubt anything. You can use your money for anything, and you can have a doubt about where it's going, for what purpose or whatever. You give it for a certain purpose, and maybe are they using it for that purpose or not? If you want, you can doubt like that. So generally, we give where we have some trust, and we have the trust, and then we don't doubt. So if there's no trust, then we can doubt. We have trust, and then we give, and we don't worry about it.
How this giving wealth for the service of Krishna help us want to advance in Krishna consciousness?
Well, if we're using it for service, so for instance, Vaishnava Seva is one of the angas of bhakti. So one of the sevas is you feed the Vaishnavas. So Raghunath Das used his wealth to make Chiradoi and distribute to all the devotees. So that's his service.
How it help us? How it purify them?
But he's doing the Vaishnava Seva, anga of bhakti. It becomes an anga of bhakti. He uses wealth to feed the Vaishnavas, and that's a type of devotional service. So therefore, he advances by that, like hearing and chanting.
Serving the devotees.
Yeah.
Coming in that category.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. But here we find that the sages are instructing Vasudeva and they move on. And in several instances in Bhagavatam, the Mahabhagavatas are teaching and they just move on. And in the same Bhagavatam, we find many verses talking about the glory of worshipping the pure devotee, taking the dust of his lotus feet. So much it's glorified. But the instructors are usually moving on. They are not staying to accept the puja or give the dust. So how do we understand that? How to understand both the instruments?
What is? Huh?
So how do we understand that, Maharaj? They are glorifying the pure devotee, but the pure devotee is not actually available for them to do service or to take the dust. In the Bhagavatam, the Mahabhagavatas are instructing either the kings, or here Vasudeva is being instructed by the sages, and they move on. They are not there in the palace instructing the king every day. The Mahabhagavatas instruct and move on.
Yeah, well, and any opportunity, then we do so. So therefore, when Narada comes to the palace, then Krishna washes his feet or whatever like that. So whenever their devotees are there, then they will, the great devotees are there, then they will do service to them in a proper way. Of course, here we find that the sages came, and then Krishna offers them praise, and saying that your serving you is much greater than taking bath in the Ganga, etc. So he offers praise to them, and this way that's his service there. So whenever there are devotees, then one takes that opportunity to serve them. There may not be devotees all the time, but whenever they come, then one follows the proper procedure and gives proper respect.
Maharaj, verse 62, Vasudeva is glorifying affection. Can you please explain that, Maharaj? Verse 62.
What about it?
He's saying maybe the God created affection for people like you. So is there a positive reason to have affection?
Well, the negative aspect, of course, is we get too attached to our family members, etc. And therefore, in the case of Vasudeva, he's saying, I'm attracted to my family, so therefore I forget about you. He's also, of course, Nanda is also directly related to him somehow, but less than his own people. So Vasudeva is in Dwarka and Nanda is there, so we tend to forget about Nanda because we're so attached to our family members. So yes, affectionate, material affection obviously is the cause of forgetting the Supreme Lord. Instead of being affectionate to the Lord, we forget that and we do other things. In the case of Vasudeva, of course, it's a little different because actually Krishna is in Dwarka, so that's a direct affectionate relationship. So on another level, of course, it's not true, but in general, people are very attached to their family members, and that's a bond which is an obstacle for surrendering to the Supreme Lord.
That they need more money and they want to be happy. Sometime one devotee came and told me, can I pray to Krishna that make me rich so I can use my wealth in your service? And I told him, you're already rich because you have Krishna with you. Why to pray?
Well, yeah, if you pray for wealth from Krishna constantly, then this becomes the type of mixed bhakti. Now, people can do that. It's better than going somewhere else to pray. So they can do that fine. But of course, we should also make sure that they advance beyond that eventually and they come to the pure stage of not asking for anything.
Also, we have seen that Krishna removes the opulence of a devotee. Yasyaham anagranami. He knows whom to give, whom not to give. If he just gives a pseudo devotee, he may misuse it.
So if it's dangerous for the devotee, then the Lord may not give or may remove it. If it is beneficial for the devotee, whatever, then he may give also. So we have both cases.